Elara hadn't meant to get lost. It was supposed to be a short trip, just a weekend escape to the sleepy town her mother never spoke of but always skirted in conversation. A place shrouded in silence and time. Armed with nothing but a frayed map and stubborn pride after a heated fight with her family. Elara took the detour into Welvale alone. The road narrowed as daylight faded, asphalt crumbling into gravel, then dirt, then barely a path at all. She missed the last clear sign half buried in ivy, weather-worn and forgotten. Welvale, pop, unknown. Her phone blinked its last gasp of battery before dying completely, leaving her in the indifferent quiet of early dusk. She tried to turn back. Every turn looked the same. Trees gnarled overhead like skeletal hands, and the overgrowth whispered with each footstep she took. Weeds clawed at her ankles, tall and wild, swaying without wind. Somewhere in the distance, a cry echoed, a soft, wavering sound, as if a child were sobbing in a dream. Elara paused, heart quickening. She called out. No reply. Her voice felt swallowed by the vastness around her. Drawn by instinct or something unspoken, she followed the sound to a clearing, a strange circle where nothing grew but weeds. No buildings, no roads, only a vast field dotted with the remnants of something long erased. A shoe, small and faded, peeked from beneath a tuft of grass. A rusted tricycle, half submerged in soil, leaned like a relic of forgotten joy. The air shifted, cooler and heavier, pressing against her skin like damp cloth. Night fell fast. The sky, once bruised with sunset, turned an inky black with no stars to guide her. Elara stumbled across a crooked fence and an abandoned shed that leaned as if it were tired of standing. With no other choice, she pushed open its door, heart pounding, and stepped into the stale air inside. Dust danced in her flashlight's beam. Something had lived here once, or maybe still did. A single child's blanket lay curled in the corner like a fossil of comfort. She tried to sleep, but in her dreams, she was falling endlessly through waves of tangled weeds. Each stalk brushing against her like reaching fingers. The earth beneath her shifted, crumbled, and gave way. She wasn't alone. Beneath her, just beyond the roots, something stirred. A pale hand, a face, a whisper. Elara jolted awake, throat raw from a scream she hadn't realized she let out. The crying had returned, clearer now, closer. Her breath caught in her chest. This wasn't just being lost. Something wanted her here. Something had been waiting. The next morning, bleary-eyed and trembling from the dream that still clung to her skin like sweat, Elara stumbled out of the shed and deeper into the wasteland, desperate for anything that resembled shelter. That's when she found it, a house half hidden behind a curtain of overgrowth. The windows were smudged with time. The paint on the door flaked off in great strips like peeling bark. Yet something about it felt less hostile than the world outside. With effort, she forced the warped door open and stepped into stillness. Dust coated every surface, but the air wasn't stale. It was preserved, as if time itself had been paused inside. A child's coat still hung by the door. The table was set for a meal that never happened. Elara moved through the rooms with caution, each footstep stirring the dust of a life long departed. In the smallest bedroom, on a narrow iron frame bed, she found a torn notebook tucked beneath a moth-eaten pillow. It was a child's diary, the handwriting looping and unsure. Most of the pages were too faded to read, but some sentences pulsed with uncanny familiarity. The weeds whisper my name when I sleep. She cries from under the ground, and finally, scrawled in shaky letters over and over, don't sleep in the weeds. Don't sleep in the weeds. The air grew heavier. Elara turned to the window. Weeds had grown higher overnight past the windowsill, climbing the walls like ivy possessed. She could have sworn they hadn't been there yesterday. That night, exhausted and without other options, she stayed in the house. She blocked the door with an old cabinet and tried to convince herself she was safe. But the crying returned, louder, closer. No longer distant, it now echoed through the hallway. In the dark, she felt it again, that sensation of being watched. When morning came, she found bare footprints around her bed. Not her own. The floorboards were stained with mud, and her shoes, left by the door, were now filled to the brim with dark, wet soil. Her breath caught in her throat. She turned slowly to the window. There, smeared on the inside glass, was a single muddy handprint. The dreams resumed, more vivid than before. Again she fell through weeds, but this time she wasn't alone. As she tumbled, slowed by the thick green, she saw her half buried, a child's pale face just beneath the surface, lips moving, reaching, begging. Elara tried to scream but couldn't. She awoke gasping, with soil under her nails and a bitter taste in her mouth, as if the dream had followed her back. She clutched the diary to her chest, trembling. It wasn't just déjà vu, this had happened before. Not to her, but someone else. Someone still here. And the house, the field, the weeds, they remembered. And now, so did she. Elara no longer trusted the morning light. It came too softly, too late, barely peeling back the veil of night's grip. On the third day, she tried once more to find the road out. She packed the torn diary, a bottle of water, and headed toward where she thought she'd come from. But the landscape betrayed her. Every path wound back to the same clearing. Even the sun seemed unsure of its place. The field waited. The weeds swayed in unison, though no breeze stirred. She was not meant to leave. That's when she saw the old woman. She sat hunched on a splintered bench by a tree long dead, her eyes white as mist. Her feet bare and calloused, rooted like she'd grown from the ground. She hummed something tuneless and low, her fingers twitching as if playing invisible strings. Elara approached, heart pounding, unsure whether to speak. But the woman turned first. "You've heard her, haven't you?" Her voice was cracked but certain. Elara nodded slowly. The woman beckoned her closer, one gnarled hand reaching into her shawl to pull out a rusted whistle. This used to keep the children safe. Until they stopped listening. Until they buried what they shouldn't have. She spoke of a time 22 years ago, when a girl disappeared from the school that once stood on this field. A child no one remembered, except in shadows and broken memories. They tore the building down in a single night. Poured salt into the dirt. But salt doesn't stop what remembers. Elara's throat tightened. "Why me?" The woman smiled, sad and small. "Because she chose you. Because you listen." That night, Elara slept in the abandoned house again, but not before placing the whistle by her bedside. The diary lay open to the last entry. She is beneath. She waits beneath. Sleep came like a sudden plunge. In the dream, Elara stood in the field again, but the sky was pitch black and full of sound, whispers, cries, names. The weeds bowed as something moved beneath them. She dropped to her knees and began to dig, frantic, until her fingers touched metal and old seesaw. Half buried, then the curve of rusted monkey bars. And deeper still, fabric, bone. She awoke gasping, soil caked under her nails once more. The next day, driven by dream and dread, she walked to the center of the field. Her feet guided her with certainty. She knelt and pressed her ear to the earth. It was faint, but their whispers pulsing through the roots like veins. She clawed at the soil, her hands blistering, and uncovered a sliver of yellow paint, a school swing's edge. Elara sat back, breath ragged. The old woman had told her one final thing. The truth is buried shallow. But the guilt runs deep. And now she knew. The field wasn't cursed by misfortune. It was haunted by silence. And the weeds, those ancient whispering sentinels, grew thickest where memory refused to die. The digging wasn't deliberate at first. Elara told herself she was just clearing away the surface, just trying to understand. But as the soil gave way, layer by layer, she felt something else. A pull. Not physical, but emotional. As if whatever lay beneath wasn't just waiting, it had been calling. Her hands, blistered and raw, trembled as she scraped at a patch of earth where the whispers grew loudest. The weeds here were taller than the rest, unnaturally so, like guardians. Her nails snagged on something hard, not rock, wood. A shallow grave. She uncovered the top of a decayed box. A child's coffin. Rot had eaten most of it, but inside remained a small skeleton curled like it had never had the chance to uncurl. The dress was faded but still intact, and around the neck rusted but unmistakable a locket. Elara reached for it with shaking hands, the ghost of metal biting her fingertips. It opened with a click. Inside, a photo of a little girl, and beside her, unmistakably, a younger version of her mother. The breath left her lungs. The dreams that night were no longer falling, they were memories, not hers. She saw flashes of a playground, laughter, then crying. The face of the girl, Tara, frightened, hiding. She watched as a group of adults, red-faced and urgent, argued in panic. A door slammed shut. A child screamed from inside. Then, silence. She woke up screaming. The old woman stood in the doorway of the abandoned house. "She was your mother's blood," the woman said softly. "Her shame. Her secret." The diary made sense now. The voice in the weeds, the face in her dreams, they were all the same girl. Tara. Hidden. Forgotten. Buried. Elara searched the house again, this time with clearer eyes. Beneath loose floorboards, she found a stash of letters, some unfinished, some scorched, written by villagers. They spoke in veiled guilt, apologies never sent. One described a stormy night when the school caught fire, but it wasn't a storm. It was erasure. They had covered up the death, blamed an accident, moved on, even her mother. Elara felt the vines tighten around her ankles just slightly. The weeds had crept in again, this time with purpose. She stumbled outside, panting. The field pulsed with energy. The soil breathed beneath her. Roots brushed against her skin as if sensing her thoughts. She had found the body, the truth. But it wasn't enough. The dream returned once more. Tara stood before her now, no longer reaching, but watching. Not angry, just waiting. Elara asked the question out loud into the dream, "What do you want from me?" The child's mouth moved, one word. "Remember." Elara woke to find a single weed growing through the crack in the floorboards, coiled around the whistle. The old woman had given her. The past wasn't just buried here. It was alive. And if Elara didn't act soon, it would pull her under too. The morning, Elara decided to finish it. The air hung still and gray, as if even the wind was waiting. She returned to the grave one last time, Tara's locket hanging around her neck, her pockets filled with the letters she'd found, truths that had long been denied breath. The field no longer frightened her. It pulsed with anticipation. The weeds, once hostile, now bowed gently in her path, as though recognizing her purpose. Elara set fire to the damp letters one by one, reading the names aloud, a ritual of exposure, of remembrance. The flames hissed and spat, refusing to burn clean. Smoke curled into the sky in twisting shapes. With each name spoken, the cries grew fainter, the soil more still. By dusk, she heard a car approaching, tires crunching gravel, an engine slowing. Her mother, Miriam. The older woman stepped out, pale and trembling, as if dragged here by the same force Elara had followed. She stared across the field, eyes locking with her daughter's, and her face collapsed into guilt. Elara said nothing at first. She merely handed her the locket. Miriam took it, hands shaking. "I thought she'd be forgotten." She wasn't. Elara guided her to the grave. They stood over it together, the silence between them heavier than the soil. Miriam knelt slowly, whispering Tara's name. A wind stirred the first in days, and the weeds around them swayed, soft and mournful. "I was 13, Miriam said, voice raw. "She was my sister. My father, he didn't want anyone to know. She was from another woman. An accident, he called her. We weren't allowed to speak her name." Tears streamed down Elara's cheeks, but she still called out. "She was locked in the shed when the fire started," Miriam said. "Everyone knew, but they all agreed it would be an accident. One clean story." Elara looked up at the darkening sky. "You buried her twice." Her mother collapsed into sobs. The night came fast, as if the field itself was eager to seal the moment. In the dream that followed, Elara no longer fell. She stood in the field, the weeds parting around her. Tara appeared once more, not pale, not broken, but whole. She smiled, reached out. And this time, Elara took her hand. She awoke with the scent of spring in the air. The field outside had changed, no longer a graveyard of memory, but quiet, gentle. At the center, a single wildflower had bloomed. But on Elara's palm, a sprout had broken through the skin, not painful, just present. Green and fragile, alive. She didn't cut it. Some truths she knew couldn't be buried. And some roots once awakened would always remain. Elara stepped outside into the morning. Behind her, the last whisper fell silent. And the weeds no longer wept.